here in suburban Toronto, Canada, and some 13.5 thousand kilometers away in Thailand, 10 p.m. We're waiting the wings. Who will be joining us shortly is Richard Tierney, trauma recovery coach, founder of Trauma Recovery Anonymous in Thailand. Hi, welcome one and all. I would love special welcome to the audience. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Before we get to Richard, let me introduce myself. I'm Dipchand Ramcharitar, Outreach and Development Coordinator here at Voice of Men 360. We are based in London, Ontario, Canada, and have been around since 2020. We're basically a men and boys advocacy group that primarily seek the interests of men and boys, although we reach out to other demographics as best we can. We are part of International Men's Day, who are available in a similar capacity in over 95 countries and have been doing this for more than 25 years. Before we kick things off with Richard, our esteemed life therapy coach, let's just run through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Not on with the show, and it's a warm welcome to our esteemed guest, Richard Tierney, trauma recovery coach. Hi, Richard. Welcome to the program.
Dipchand, thank you very much for having me on the Voices of Men. I didn't even know this platform existed, and it's really cool to come across a platform that's dedicated to men. We really need as much help as possible in this field. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into. I have some questions that I'm yearning to ask you. So let's get right to it. So first of all, can you give us a brief background of your life, including what brought you to this path you're currently on?
Okay, well, we'd hope to look for the familiarities rather than the differences. So what I'd like to share with you is I have this belief, and it hasn't been put to any mental health professionals, but I've had this idea that there are 4 types of people in the world, and it all starts in the womb. So I know this platform doesn't deal with politics or religion, and I don't intend to speak about politics or religion, but my practice is spiritual. So I'm going to just mention something very quickly, is that I believe that we're made in the image of the Creator. That's all I'm going to say, okay? And when we're in the womb, when we go from the womb to coming into real life, we don't die a death. We're coming from life to life. And in that moment of coming from the womb into life, we experience fight, flight, freeze, or acceptance. So what happens is the child that comes out of the womb and he's comatose. And again, this is not an attack on midwives or the maternity fields. But when a child comes out of the womb comatose, then the midwife holds him up by the ankle, slaps him on the bottom to get a response, puts him into a cot after he got the response. But in that moment, the child learns that their primary response to danger of freeze doesn't work. And they go through the next number of years being in a state of fight or flight. The next child comes out of the womb and he's kicking and screaming. He's in a state of fight, trying to beat off his attackers. And then the midwife puts the baby in a blanket, puts him in the cot, and it learns in that moment that its response of fight doesn't work. And so it goes through its early life in a state of freeze or flight. Third child comes out of the womb kicking and screaming. and it's trying to run away, and the midwife wraps the child up in a blanket, puts it into a cot, and in that moment, that child learns that flight doesn't work and is stuck in a state of fight or freeze. Now, the fourth child comes out of the womb happy, joyous, and free, quite happy, cheerful. And because the child is cheerful, there's no trouble to the mother. So the nurse hands that baby to the mother. The mother holds it for a moment, bosom to bosom, heartbeat to heartbeat. The child goes into a cot. And we see those people in the world. We think the strong, silent type, the success people, we think, I'd love to be like them. You know, they're the ones that have all their responses intact. But 3/4 of the population are stuck in a state of fight or flight, or fight or freeze or flight. And I believe that's where I was. My family, my parents and my siblings were all, I think, came out of the womb in that happy, joyful state, and they had all their responses intact. I believe that my response of fight was taken from me. So I came out stuck in a state of flight or freeze. So I'm a big man. I'm 120 kilos. I'm 64 years of age, and I'm a big coward. And I used to hear these phrases like, "You're only a big girl. You're a big teddy bear. You're not even a real man." Those things that would put you down. But the truth was, my responses to danger was originally was meant to be fight, but it became flight or freeze. And I felt guilty and ashamed that my response to danger was fight or freeze. Now, my family of origin, were very much socially outgoing, extrovert, so success orientated, really kind of confident and confident in themselves and being around people. I was now the exact opposite. I was this introverted, quiet, very shy, very withdrawn child.
Right.
I remember when I was very young, I used to think I was adopted, or I must have been dropped on my head as a child, or mixed at birth, that I couldn't be in this family. There's something wrong with me, you know? And that's how I grew up with this sense.
Right. Thank you so much for that enlightening introduction. So let's move on to the subject of men. And for those men who have carried trauma for years or decades, how do you tailor your approach to address the complexities and depths of their experiences?
These are great questions. They're very deep, and I want to share that. But my therapy practice I offer is completely different to what's available at the moment. The whole goal of this therapy practice that I offer is not to trigger the client. That's the primary goal, is not to trigger the client. We don't talk about the trauma event itself or the feelings around it. The goal of this program is for the client to understand that what happened in the past didn't happen to the person they are today. I try and break this down as simply as possible. Yesterday, I was all anxious and nervous and apprehensive about doing this presentation today. Worried about would I speak too fast, because by nature I speak very fast when I get excited about things. Would I be able to speak slowly and clearly? And would I be able to offer hope to your audience that there is a solution to their trouble? And here I am in the moment actually doing this presentation. I'm here on time and I'm sharing, I feel, as slowly and clearly. I'm offering a message of hope. Two different aspects of the same person. And if I'm not the same person I was yesterday as I am today, then I'm not the same person who suffered a trauma 52 years ago in my childhood. I'm a 64-year-old man today, living in northern Thailand, originally from Ireland, married to my wife and children in the present. And that 12-year-old child living in Ireland 52 years ago, 7,000 miles away, suffered a trauma, but it didn't happen to me. The goal of this program is to lay a foundation where the client clearly sees the past is not their business. And if it's not their business, it's not their business to suffer. It's not their business to seek vengeance or justice for. They learn to let go of it.
The next question is a sort of a lead up into it. And I consider this question very important because for a lot of people going through trauma, one of the problems they encounter, they're scared of, is when they have to relate everything that triggered them, they feel that it's going to re-trigger. So based on that, what specific strategies do you use to manage the potential triggers and emotional intensity that can arise during the healing process?
Again, it goes back to the previous answer or question and answer. The client has to understand that they only exist in these 24 hours. Right here, right now. I'm here with yourself and with Sivan at your podcast. I'm sitting in my office at my home here in Northern Thailand, and I'm here right now. And if I'm here with you right now, I can't be in the body of a 12-year-old child 52 years ago. I can care deeply for that 12-year-old child. I can really feel his pain that he went through, but he went through it, not me. I carry the memory of what happened to him, and I carry sympathy pains for him as a show of support and solidarity for what he went through. But he went through it. I can't fight his battles for him. I can't suffer his pain for him. I can feel for him, but I didn't suffer the experience myself. So it's not about what can we do to deal with the emotions. It's not our job to deal with emotions. We have to find a way of giving the past back to our younger self in a safe and non-intrusive manner. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it didn't happen. That doesn't work, and you can easily see why. We have to find some way, a holistic practice, where you can give the details and the baggage of the past back to your younger self. So in my case, I'm a 64-year-old man. I gave that baggage back to that 12-year-old child who suffered the trauma event. He took it from me and he stepped into the light. And when he stepped into the light, I felt a release in my body mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So the goal is, we're not talking to you about what happened to you because it didn't happen to you. We have to get you out of that role of thinking it happened to you and you have to suffer it.
Right.
That's the big thing.
Okay, excellent. Before we continue, I just want to point out that this is a special time of broadcast. Actually is usually on Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, moving back into the actual gist of the program itself, when it comes to the issue of anger, how do you help men navigate and process their anger? And the second part of that question is, what role does forgiveness play in the healing journey?
Okay, well, now, again, you can't just give everything to your younger self, because over the years that you've carried this baggage and you've suffered it, anger will have happened in your life. So there'll be anger belonging to you, and there's the anger you're bringing from the past. So the anger you're bringing from the past, you're going to give back to your younger self because it's his anger. And then you're going to leave them seek forgiveness for what happened to them. That's all theirs. But when it comes to yourself and your anger you've experienced, so for me, I carry the baggage and the loss of my inner child, so to speak, at the age he was 12 years of age, and I carried his troubles. So when I gave it back to him, I gave him back all his troubles. But then when I did this, I was about 50 years of age. But then in the next 10 years, I experienced anger, and I experienced that idea of not forgiving people. There was situations in my life where I felt terrible anger and I felt like not forgiving people. But what I was doing was I was robbing myself of peace of mind. Now, for my own anger and my own need for forgiveness, again, I'm trying not to talk about religion as much as possible, but there's a spiritual practice that says that if we hold on to anger,
right,
the other person is completely unaware that we have this anger, but we're destroying our souls, we're destroying our minds. We're allowing this to eat away at us. It's eating a hole in our soul. And if we want peace of mind today, we have to forgive the other person. Now, again, the idea of forgiving the other person who's harmed us is very, very hard. So there's one spiritual tradition, I'm not going to say which one it is, and it says that if you give your anger to that higher power, he will take vengeance for you. And that makes great sense to me. That means that this person can have a great life on this earth, and he can have a wonderful life, whatever. But when it comes to the end of his days, he's going to burn the fires of hell for eternity. And that is a kind of a sense of peace for me, that he's not getting away with what he did to me. He's going to suffer it for all eternity. But to get that to happen, I've got to forgive him every day, 10 times a day, 20 times a day, until he no longer presses my buttons, until I've cast him from my mind. So I have to go through a phase of forgiving them again and again and again and again and again, until one day I see that person and they don't press my buttons, and I realize he's gone. And then I know if he's gone from myself, he's been given over to my understanding of this God thing, and he's going to get him, and it's all good.
Yeah, well, forgiveness is essential to help us to heal and to move on. Now, with trauma, there's usually a loss and grief involved. How can men use your program to work through these complex emotions?
Again, it comes back to that very first idea, the first question. It didn't happen to you or I. What happened to that 12-year-old child 52 years ago in my life didn't happen to the 64-year-old man.
Right.
There's nothing compares who I am with him. So if it didn't happen to me, it's not my job to suffer his pain for him.
Right.
The best way I can describe this to you today is, imagine today, Dipchand, I'm not too sure how old you are. I don't want to ask you, but I'm going to imagine you say you're about 50 years of age. And let's imagine you're going through a trauma in your life today, not from your past, but to your life today. So maybe there's a problem with your partner or your boss or your colleagues, or something's happening where you're having trauma in your life today. And you're committed to getting through this trauma today. You're planning on, you want to get through it as quickly as possible, and you're going to really suffer it now so the future aspects of you won't have to deal with it. And let's say you do that for a year or two to finally get past it. And then you're looking at yourself in 20 years' time. You see a 70-year-old Dipchand who should be enjoying his retirement, going into the attic of his mind, pulling from the dark recesses a big chest, opening up that chest and putting out a cloak, and putting that cloak up, zipping it up on the front and stepping out into his life, telling the whole world that what happened to you 20 years previously happened to him. And the question is, how would you feel about that?
Yeah. I think the problem for most people is letting go. They can't seem to let go, no matter what they do, and that's why they hang on. I think that's what part of what trauma is. So,
yeah. So if they can practice that, where they can see themselves, their future self taking their troubles, they'll see that what they're saying, give me back my stuff.
Right.
And in the same way, what I'm carrying today, my younger self is saying to me, give me back my stuff. And that's
good really point. Yeah. So moving on, what scientific research or evidence-based practices inform your program, and how do you stay up to date with the latest development in trauma recovery?
Well, for starters, there's three scientific principles that really kind of support this program. The first is cause and effect. Science tells us it's all about cause and effect.
Right.
The cause is what happened in the past. The effect is how it manifests in your life. Now,
sure.
Dipchand, if you had a sore tooth and you had to go to the dentist, and the day you go to the dentist, there's no sore tooth, you don't say to the dentist, my tooth's fine, you go home. You describe to your dentist how bad your tooth can be, and then they make a diagnosis to tell you what's wrong with it.
Exactly.
Same when you go to a mental disorder, a mental health professional. When you go to see him, you share with him how the past trauma manifests in your life. You might say, well, last month I was very depressed, and a month before that I was really very angry. I was triggered very easily, and then at nighttime I suffer with terrible nightmares, and occasionally if I hear a car exhaust, I can get flashbacks. And you're sharing all these different experiences of what it can be like, but it's not your permanent state. You're handling your life quite well for someone who's coming from trauma, but you have these bouts of moods which are caused by the sense of hopelessness and a sense of being not complete, being kind of inferior and broken in some way. And these are the two traits you have. They're hopelessness and inferiority, and you describe it as, I suffer with nightmares, I suffer with flashbacks, I suffer with stress and anger and sadness and grief and uncontrollable grief. But when you share this with a therapist, they put all that together and they come up with, you have PTSD, or you have bipolar, or you have depression disorder, or you have CPTSD, but they're making that diagnosis based on your coping skills. Your bouts of depression and anxiety and whatever, these are your coping skills. These are your coping skills you use so you won't kill your wife, or won't kill your husband, or won't kill your children. When you're triggered, that you don't blow up and kill somebody, you get depressed or you withdraw. Your coping skills to cope, they're your effect. The mental health professional treat the effect, and they don't go near the cause.
Okay.
So my suggestion is we leave the effect alone and we treat the cause. And the only way we can treat the cause is to give the cause back to its rightful owner. So I had to give the cause back to that 12-year-old child. For a veteran who's 50 years of age, he gives it back to the 19-year-old version of his who enlisted in the army. The woman who married, or the man who married a narcissist at the age of 22 and he's 45 today, he gives the baggage back to that 22-year-old version of him who married the narcissist, and so on. You're giving it to your younger self, and you're getting them to take it into the light, and then you're free of it. That's the first part of it. The second one is the fact that science tells us that our bodies change every 7 years. So the body you're in from birth till the age of 7 is one body, and then millions of cells die every day. So that by the time you get to the age of 7, you're in a completely new body to the one you were born in. And then from 7 to 14, you're in another body, and then from 14 to 21, and so on. So I'm
Right.
64 years of age today. So I'm in the 10th cycle. My body's changed 10 times. I'm in this new body for the next 63 to 70 years of age. So I can't say I carry the pain of what happened in the past in my body, because my body's changed so many times. This body wasn't abused. It was a
Right.
body in the second cycle from the age of 7 to 14. That was the body that was abused, a 12-year-old child, not a 64-year-old man's body. So I can't say anymore it happened to me, because it didn't happen to this physical body.
Right.
And everything, the mind, every part of this body has changed over these 7 cycles. So the question is, where am I retaining or holding on to this pain? And it's a hole in my soul. So again, it's a spiritual malady, spiritual illness. We have a hole in our soul that causes the broken spirit, the broken will to live, the feeling less than and inferior and hopeless. That's all a soul sickness. So rather than treating the effects of the trauma, we need to give the trauma back to its younger self, and then we have to treat for the hole in the soul with a spiritual solution.
Right. Very interesting. Now, the next question, you may have answered this or part of it at least already. But the question goes, how does your program differ from other trauma recovery approaches, and what unique benefits does it offer?
Well, mental health professionals have been treating trauma for the last 80 years. And unfortunately, in the last 80 years, they've gone from one person diagnosed with PTSD or with mental disorder to 1 billion people. 1/8 of the world's population have been diagnosed with mental disorders. And
Right.
it's not working. The numbers keep increasing. There's no solution, because they're treating the effect and not the cause. If you're being treated for the effect, for your broken coping skills, if you've been treated for PTSD or depression or whatever, you're never going to be cured. You're going to always be someone who's broken. You're going to always be in treated for a mental disorder, because they're treating the effect and not the cause. My program focuses solely on the cause. We ignore the effect. The effect was your best coping skills. They were your instincts you were given in the face of danger to run away, hide, freeze, cry, throw a tantrum, whatever. They were natural responses you have to danger. To treat them as a mental disorder is destroying your ability to be a human being. So in my program, I get the client to give the past event back to their younger self. In my case, I said 64-year-old man giving that past back to a 12-year-old child. If you're a 55-year-old veteran, you're giving your past back to that young 19 or 20-year-old you who enlisted in the army. If you married a narcissist at the age of 22 and you're 47 today, you're giving the cause back to that 22-year-old younger version of you. If you lived in a dysfunctional home, abusive home, and you were 8 years of age at that time, you're giving the past back. You're a 35-year-old man today giving the past back to that 8-year-old child. It's none of your business. It didn't happen to you, and you must give it back to a younger self. So I like to share with my clients. Imagine you and I are very good neighbors, and we really are very, very good neighbors. And I lose my job, and I'm looking for a new job, and I get a job on the other side of the world on an oil rig, and I'm going to be gone for 3 years. And I give you the keys to my house and ask you to mind my house, and I go off. And when I'm gone, you get a call to go for an interview yourself, but the buses are on strike or something. And you remember I have a car in my drive and in my garage, and you go in and get my car and you drive it off to the appointment. And over the next 3 years, you're driving the car every day. You look after the car and you get insurance and everything, but you're driving the car like it's your own. And you're driving it every single day. And then one day you get an email 3 years later saying, I'm coming home. And you have that little red devil on one shoulder saying, possession is 9/10 of the law, keep the car. And then the white angel on the other side saying, no, Richard, you have to give the car back. It's not yours. And so you service the car and you clean this up and you put it in his garage, and you put his car keys on his hall table with money to cover the mileage you put on the car. And then you go home and you're pensive and you're awake all night wondering what he's going to say to you when he comes home. And then about a day or two later, there's a knock on the door, and you open the door and there's your neighbor, and he comes in and he gives you a big bear embrace, and he says, thank you very much for taking care of my house and my car, and here's your money back. I wouldn't dream of taking any money off you, but thank you for looking after my house and my car. And he takes the car back off you, the keys, and he walks away. And that moment, the release you feel in your body that you've given the car back, it's gone out of your life. It's no longer plays in your mind. You let it go. That's the experience you experience when you give the cause back to your younger self. And once you've given the cause back to your younger self, you realize now there's no reason for the effect to be in your life. So then you do the 12-step program of Trauma Recovery Anonymous to undo the learned dysfunctional behavior of that diagnosis.
Okay, very interesting. On a similar, or rather a sort of a follow-up on the same subject, Can you share any notable success stories or case studies that demonstrate the effectiveness of your program?
There's three I'd like to share with you. The first was a veteran. I don't want to give any information about this person, but this veteran came to a treatment center I was working in, and he'd been there for about a couple of months. He'd suffered with PTSD for almost 50 years, and he'd been in and out of treatment centers and seen his therapist and whatever. And he wanted somewhere to come just to give his family a break, I think. I think he wanted to come somewhere where he could kind of be taken care of and give his family a break because he was going insane. And he came to the center, and he was there for a while before I met him, and they tried everything and nothing was really working. And I was working in the holistic department. And so his therapist sent him to me to work with. I think that it was just more to keep him busy than anything else. I don't think they expected any miracles to come from working with me, but it was a case of giving something, going to the holistic department, he could do some exercises up there and that would keep him busy or something. And so they came to see me. And the one thing about this man was he had a faith in God, which was mind-blowing. I'd never heard. He kept saying, thanks be to God and oh, holy God. It was wonderful to hear from an elderly man talking about a faith. I didn't have that faith. It was really kind of beautiful. But anyway, I took him through the process and we did it for about an hour. The whole way through, he kept saying, oh, thanks be to God and whatever. And then when the session was over, he said, Richard, thank you very much for working with me. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it helped. And then he left me and he went off, and I finished my day's work and I went home. And the next morning I came into work and he's outside my office door, like a cat on a hot tin roof, jumping around on his feet. And when I walk up, he's crying and he gives me a big hug. And we go into the office and he tells me that he left me after the session and he didn't believe anything had happened. And he went back to his room and he had a shower and he lay down. He had a little afternoon nap, and then in the evening went up to the restaurant and he met his friends and he had his meal up there. And again, he wasn't aware of any change, but when he came back to his room, he didn't take his meds. He just got into bed and he slept like for about 9 hours of this deep, peaceful sleep. And he woke up in the morning realizing that his demons were gone. He'd cast out his demons. He'd quietened the voices in his head. He'd slayed his dragons, and he'd let go of the past. So when he came to me the next morning, he was in tears of joy. I mean, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy. This man was so happy, tears streaming down his face. It was gone. All he kept saying, thanks be to God, thanks be to God. Not thanks be to Richie, just thanks be to God. But it was a wonderful experience of seeing, a miracle happening, I like to think. Well, that was the first point.
Yeah. So I know you said you had three, but can you give us one more because we're running out of time? So.
Yeah. Certainly. Well, probably the second one was I worked with a client who came from a very broken, dysfunctional home, and because of what happened in their childhood, they weren't able to turn their head for fear of what was the trouble from behind. So they got locked neck, and they weren't able to. They have to turn the whole body to turn around as they grew up. Now they could be very successful, but they came to the center and they were there for a couple of months now, and they were trying to find something to help this person move forward, and a lot of it wasn't working. So they sent me down to me again. I think they expected anything to happen, but they sent me down into the holistic department to try something different. And I took her through this process, and we're working away at this process. And about 45 minutes into it, she goes, "I can move my head. I can move my head." And she says, moving her head from side to side, laughing gleefully, "I can move my head." The first time in 40 years she's able to move her head. As a child, she got this locked thing with her father's coming, and she thought the father was going to beat her up or whatever. She'd always feel like this. And so she's kind of going, "I can move my head." And she ran out of the room, and that was, "I can move my head." She ran off to tell her therapist, and it was like this grown woman, running at 56 years of age, I can move my head. Like it was just, that kind of thing was like, that's when you see it clearly.
Right. So that's absolutely inspiring and amazing, to witness and be part of something, that special. When we all know that trauma, helping out with trauma therapy is essential for recovery. But when it comes to what role does self-compassion play in the healing process, and how do you encourage men to cultivate self-compassion and self-care?
Wow. Again, I love these questions. They really are on the point. We have to learn to understand that if the past didn't happen to us, like giving the car back to your neighbor, you give it back to him. Now, again, you can't bury in your head pretend it didn't happen. You've got to actually find some way of giving it back to your younger self. And this program, Trauma Recovery Anonymous, the healing event, Healing Any Trauma Memory, allows you to give the details back to your younger self and have a conversation where your younger self says to you, Dipchand, I've been waiting for the last 30 years for you to notice me. Please give me back my crap. And then you give it back to him and you see him stepping into the light. And the freedom in that moment is a sense of self-love. You're finally allowing yourself. I love this idea. Every spiritual tradition, and like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, tells us we have to live in the I am. When we live in the I was or the I will be, we are destroying our lives. If we're living in the depression and despair of the past and the I was, or the anxiety and fear of the future and the I will be, or what will happen in the future, we can't have a life. It's got one foot in the front, in the past, one foot in the forward, and of course, as they say, we're SHITTING all over the present. We have to learn to sit in the present by being I am. And we do this by giving the past back to our younger self. And I like that share to you about looking into the future and seeing that older version of you suffering your pain. You'd be saying to them, please, 70-year-old Dipchand, give me back my rubbish. I want to leave this plane of existence. Your younger self is saying to you, Dipchand, please give me back my troubles from the past. They're not yours. They never were yours. I can't step into the light until you give them to me. That's the compassion, is to allow yourself to give it back. You're not betraying your younger self. Your younger self wants to leave, but they can't leave until they have all their baggage. By you holding on to the baggage, you're betraying them, and you're bringing the death, decay, and disease of a dead thing into your life, and it's destroying everything it touches. And you can look at the carnage in your life and how it's destroyed relationships and friendships. So it's a case of giving it back, and that's the best self-compassion, self-love you can do. Just give the past back to whoever owns it, so you're free to have your life in the present.
Excellent. If it's one thing philosophers, doctors, and the clergy agree on, is live in the present. Leave out the past. Don't worry about the future. Focus on the present, and your life would be much more rewarding. So moving on to the issue of community. Can you discuss the importance of community and social support in the healing process, and how can men build leverage from these networks?
Well, I think this platform, for one, shows you that community is very important and very effective. To have a platform for men is super. We don't have a lot of resources for men, and to have a platform, and you're saying there's 95 other organizations around the world, or 95 countries have all these organizations around the world. That is phenomenal. We need to have more of that. So in 12-step recovery, you form your own community. So if I can take one person through this program, or I can take 10 people at one time. It's a very safe way. And if you do 10 people, then that 10 people can form their own group and have a group where they meet once a week and they chat about this is going on. Like this platform, they talk about how the program is and how it's working. And they're always in the solution and not in the problem. So you don't go back to talking about, I was a victim. Those days are gone. Now we're talking about what my life is today. So I'm in Voice of Men, and I'm working on setting healthy boundaries in the present. And I no longer play the role of victim, and I have better self-restraint and better boundaries. And you learn to live in the present. And with your fellow members of Voices of Men, you chat about this, have conversations, you read the book, you practice all the exercise in the book over and over, every week, once a week, twice a week, whatever you can do it. You start your own group. And then if you have 10 people, you break them into 5 pairs, and 2 people work as their own mentors. So they mentor each other. So I'd mentor you, Dipchand, you'd mentor me. And then we'd meet as a group with the group, and we'd bring it in there. And it's very important that we build this. And it starts in AA, it started with 2 people. And now they've got something like 2 million people are AA members. Everything starts small, but you don't lose heart. You stay at it, like in Voices of Men. You stay at it until it goes into something beautiful.
Yeah. Just a slight correction. It's Voice of Men, not Voices of Men. Just
okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. What ongoing support and resources do you offer clients once they've completed your program, and how do you encourage continued growth and healing? That's after your program.
Okay. Well, the practice I offer is a 3-hour practice. I take you to the 2-hour healing event, and then I take you to the 12 steps in one sitting. And then I arrange to meet with you once a week, and we do the 12 steps a day over that meeting. So we might, if you've got a problem with step 1, we'll go over step 1. If someone has a problem with step 2, we'll go over step 2. And once a week we'll meet for half an hour, 40 minutes. So there's no charge for the follow-up. So I charge for when we meet for the 3-hour healing event. Again, I've got bills to pay like anybody else, and I make a living, so wife and children. So what I do is, if you're coming to see me in FaceTime, I would charge €300 for FaceTime. And if it's more than one person, it's €200. But if we're going to do it online, like on Zoom or something, it's €60 for one person, or €40 per person for more than one person, whether it's 2 or 100. And we did the program together. And then there'd be no charge to meet you, whatever, for 60 days after that. 60 practices where you join a group and we go through the session once a week.
Yeah, it's important to have a follow-up. And so I'm sure
and then you organize your own group as well. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure they would benefit a lot from that extra 60 days that you offer them. So when it comes generally to men who are struggling to find the right support and resources for their trauma recovery, what advice would you give them?
Well, this is a whole new frontier. So everything that's come before this, I believe, doesn't work. I don't mean to be big-headed or whatever, but if you look at people who have PTSD or depression, they've had it forever. Any clients I've worked with, they tell me they've been having PTSD for months and years and decades, which means it isn't working. If it was working, if you went to a doctor for a broken leg and they basically decided so you go to the doctor with your broken leg, okay? And they go and they give you medication for the broken leg, for the pain, and for the silliness of the accident and send you away, but they don't put your leg in a cast. They don't give you crutches. They don't give you a walking frame. And you're just taking medication for the pain and for the damage, but you're not getting your leg mended. What happens? You end up getting your leg amputated.
Good point.
We have to treat the cause. So if you're just treating the effect, which is the PTSD, you keep treating the coping skills as a mental disorder, there is no hope for you of ever recovering. Now, it's a frightening concept to actually give up what you've been doing for 10, 20 years and try to work with somebody who's not a mental health professional to try something completely different. It'd be very scary. So I'm not saying lay down your arms and your tools and jump into this. It'll be very challenging for you, but just be aware of, try and find out and see. You may have to do this program with me 3 or 4 times to finally allow it to sink in. But do it once and realize the truth of this, and then over time you can find some way of doing it where you can make the changeover. It's a big challenge to give up. Again, I worked with one chap I worked with in therapy for I think about 20 years with 30 different therapists. And when we finished this session, he couldn't give up his life of being in therapy, of being in his PTSD support group and being the leader in it and the chairperson, whatever. And he couldn't give that identity up. So although the thing worked, he couldn't make that transition. And I'm not throwing stones from my glass house. It's a very hard thing to do. If you've been stuck in a rut and in conditioned to be a certain way, to break free of that, you need to be really at the end of your tether where you're thinking, if I don't do this now, I'm done for. And that's the kind of people who get this at this time.
Okay, very good. Well, we are almost to the end of our program. I have one final question for you, Richard. But before I get to that, I'd just like to pass on some further information about our organization. There are no limitations to gender, age, nationality, ethnic, or any such demographic. Any walk of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses, pretty much anyone out there. Here's some contact information for you. Our phone number is 226-289-8784. Our email address is info@voiceofmen360.org. And our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. When it comes to social media, you can pretty much find us anywhere. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. We do have a YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. We'd love you to subscribe to it, invite your friends along. And also we have a Facebook group page. Please join our group and look at our daily activities. And again, invite your friends as well. So we're pretty much at the end of our program, and we have one final question for Richard. Richard, can you offer some contact information about those interested in learning more about your work?
Thank you, Dipchand. Dipchand and Savannah, very kindly, they've shown my email address, which is on the screen right now.
Right.
I'm on social media, Trauma Recovery Anonymous Tierney Therapy, and my own name, Richard Tierney. They're my three primary. I don't have a website just yet. My son is helping me design a website, and I'm setting up my own podcast. That's happening at the moment. So when I have that, I'll have it on my Facebook pages. Contact me if you'd like to know more about this. I can have a chat with you. No charge. Half an hour chat. If you want to ask questions to me, I can have a chat with you for a half an hour on Zoom or some such. Three things I'll leave you with. One is learn that you're not a victim, that what happened in the past didn't happen to you. Two, no secrets. Always tell somebody how you're feeling. Don't keep it to yourself. That's the worst thing you can do, is keep it to yourself. Someone will always want to be able to help you. And three, find some understanding of this being a spiritual solution. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Richard. We certainly appreciate the time and energy and information you've shared with the audience. Richard Tierney, trauma recovery coach and founder of Trauma Recovery Anonymous Thailand. Again, thank you, Richard. It's been an absorbing and a very informative session, and I'm sure the audience would benefit a lot. To the people out there who've joined us today, we certainly appreciate your time. Again, thank you so very much. On one note, I just want to emphasize that this program is usually on Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, I would like to mention, quietly behind the scenes, not out in the front as I am, is our president, Sivam Vedlaltam. He's behind the scenes working to ensure the broadcast runs seamlessly. Thank you so much, Sivam. And again, thanks to the audience out there and to Richard himself. From all of us here at Voice of Men at 360, thank you for joining us, and cheers for having a good day. Goodbye from us.